I feel like my brain has gotten noisier lately. Maybe that's my fault for consuming way more information than my brain could ever need. Maybe it's just an unavoidable part of the world we're living in, but I feel like, for me at least, the solution is pretty simple. Usually all it takes to quiet my mind is to shift my focus to each of my 5 physical senses. Call it mindfulness, meditation, awareness, call it whatever you want, but it's pretty difficult to be dwelling on the past or worrying about the future when you're actively taking note of all of the different sounds and sights and smells that surround you.
That just tells me
Okay, thanks for watching my first test with the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K Pro. I am just borrowing this from Blackmagic right now, so I haven't bought it yet, but I figured I'd just share some initial thoughts with this camera because up until this point I've been shooting on the EOS R for the last couple years, and before that the 80D. So this camera is definitely a big change, and I'm not gonna get super detailed. This isn't gonna be like an extensive review, but at least just my thoughts on how it worked for me. I am a very, what should I say, haphazard filmmaker, I guess. I kind of just carry my camera around with me and shoot whatever, and I'm not good at planning stuff out. Very run and gun, I guess. So yeah, this shoot in Hawaii was very unplanned. I was just running around with the camera, pointing it at random things. With that said, this camera has no stabilization. I didn't have lens stabilization. The camera doesn't have IBIS or digital stabilization. I only was shooting with a cage and a top handle. Didn't even bring a tripod, which some of those shots might look like they're on a tripod, but those were just handheld and then stabilized in post, which this was my first video I've ever edited on Davinci Resolve, and I was really impressed how the stabilization worked. The image out of this camera is just insane. It looks so beautiful, and it's not surprising since I'm used to shooting in 1080 8-bit on this camera, and then now this camera can shoot up to 6K RAW. I was only shooting in 4K ProRes 422, and even that just looks so good. I didn't want to go crazy and shoot in 6K RAW because I felt like I was already learning enough with a new camera and a new editing software that I didn't want to have to learn how to deal with RAW footage on top of that. But you might have noticed I shot a lot of shots like directly into the sun. I really like backlit images and more silhouette images, and a bunch of these shots were just straight up shooting into the sun, and I couldn't believe how much detail that you could still see in the frame even with the sun just blasting the front of the camera. So yeah, the dynamic range is super good. I don't know what the specs are because I don't really care about the specs, but the dynamic range looks really great. Another thing that stood out on this camera is the internal ND filters. That's a game changer, and I didn't really expect it to be that big of a deal, but that was massive. I'm used to the screw-on front of the lens ND filters, which are great, but I end up throwing them in my pocket all the time and they just get trashed. I've sat on a couple and broken them because I was filming and put them in my back pocket and then just sat on them later and broke them. So internal NDs is really nice. And I'm not aware of any options with internal NDs that even come close to competing with the price of this camera. This camera goes for $2,500, and I think the next closest options are either the Canon C70 or the Sony FX6, which I think are both around like 5 or 6 grand. So like double the price of this thing. Battery life was fine. It wasn't phenomenal, but it definitely wasn't horrible. I would imagine if you're shooting in 6K RAW, it would probably eat through way more batteries. But I carried 3 batteries with me every day, and they weren't all day shoots. I wasn't shooting non-stop, but 3 batteries was plenty for me in a day. The only thing that makes it hard for my style of videos and this YouTube style of filmmaking is the flip screen. You know, having this style of flip screen that only goes up and down and doesn't flip out makes it, you know, so you can't do the vlog stuff and see yourself, but that's not really what this camera's for, so that makes sense. It really inspired me to want to make more planned out, produced films. There's such a movie-like quality to the image out of this thing that it almost, it deserves to have a more planned out shoot than just the run around and pointed at things style that I was using it for. But obviously it's fine for that too. So yeah, that's kind of all my thoughts on it. I don't know if you have any questions about my experience with it. I'm happy to answer those in the comments below, or if you have any thoughts on your experience with the 6K Pro, I'd love to hear about it. But yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. I appreciate you a lot, and I'll see you soon.